In the spirit of speaking about compliance and adherence, what are some of the barriers, Doc, you've experienced? And I know maybe for you in that context, maybe you've not experienced barriers.
Yeah, they are there. They are still. Trust me. What I realized is
Yes, yes,
human beings are human beings, Jackie. It
yes,
doesn't
yes,
matter where. It doesn't matter whether they're from Canada or Kenya or you where. The only difference is just resource rich, resource limited. But then the rest, I would actually break it down as patient centered factors, system factors, and just others, like maybe the provider factors. So when it comes to provider factors, you've mentioned one of them, which is very important, is lack of, you see, like in your case, when you started the medication, you're like, I know this is good for you because you went maybe to a CME where uliambiwa kachai, ukaambiwa hii dawa ni dawa mzuri daktari. Then now that's the dawa you've been writing. I'm not saying that's what happened, but like you know how it is in the medical system. So you're like, this dawa, I know, I've heard about it. And juzi walitupeleka CMU wakatufunza vizuri, so let me write this. Then you forget that what about the long-term affordability? What about, like the indications? What about so there are many things you have to look at as a healthcare provider. So that's why it's always a journey of learning and relearning as healthcare providers. We cannot assume that paternalistic role that the older doctors used to have,
yes.
where they were always right and they were
Mhm.
always, what they say is law.
Yes.
That's how it used to be, Cindy. And some of them
Yeah,
were still.
that's true. That's very true.
And trust me, the way I approach my patients now is very different. And that's probably why across board, I get patients who tell me, hey, you're the first doctor who's actually listened. And I've heard that in Kenya and I've heard that here. So it means that's why I was telling you, patients want somebody who can listen. Because when you listen, then
Yes.
you understand what their concerns are. You'll be able to tell, this one, the concern is money. So whenever I write my medication, I should make sure I take care of that. Or this one, the
Yeah.
concern is depression. So I should not just write anything. Do you know beta blockers, for example, would worsen depression?
Mhm.
But we write beta blockers for everybody. We don't remember that if you have a depressed patient, perhaps a beta blocker might not be the best choice. It might be indicated, but go slow on it. So we have to always kind of build our knowledge so that we can do better for our patients and treat our patients with empathy the way we would want to be treated. I have seen healthcare providers who have locums in private sector and public sector.
Yeah.
The way they treat
Yeah.
patients in the private sector is very different from the way they treat the public ones, which breaks my heart.
Mhm.
Just because somebody doesn't have money doesn't mean you should just, not listen to them or feel like they have nothing to, there's a certain way in which they are taken, which I think is wrong. So healthcare providers, we have a long way to go. We have to be better. We have to read. We have to, make ourselves more knowledgeable and look at the patient holistically. That's why what I love about you saying, like, you don't just look at their perspective of the disease. You want to look at what's behind the disease. Yeah, you want to dig deeper. So we all have to try to do that. Now,
Yeah.
the other thing that I've seen as a barrier is the patient factors. And patient factors, including culture, there are certain barriers, for example, here that the indigenous Canadians, we have indigenous Canadians, and then we have regular Canadians, and then we have Akina Sisi immigrants.
The immigrants.
So indigenous Canadians are like the indigenous Americans, and they have their own challenges. I can't get into them right now. So whenever I see a patient who is indigenous, I already know that there are certain challenges they have that other people don't have. And the way I would address their treatment is a bit different from others because it's like having a patient from where in our case, from like rural, there's a different culture. Like there's just something different with the way they approach everything. And so you
Yes.
also have to be respectful of that culture, but at the same time, make sure that you're giving them the best. Other patient related factors are things like the autonomy. I feel like there are many cases where the patient should have their own autonomy, but because they are not the main financier of their issues, they end up not, how do I put it? Like it's kind of they're put on the back seat because they are not the ones who are providing the finances for the particular journey. And
Uh-huh.
that changes everything, because you are supposed to the patient is supposed to be your patient, but sometimes you're ending up dealing with the patient's mother or the patient's husband or the patient's something, rather than
Yes.
putting the patient first. It's both a healthcare provider and a patient factor, I think, put together, because we have to have that intuition to kind of tell when there's something like that. But also on the patient side, we have to uplift the patient to understand that you are still the driver of your journey. As long as your GCS is 15, yeah, as long as you're competent, you should be the driver of your journey, even
Yes.
though you're not maybe the one with the money, or you're not the one. Speak for yourself, speak out your problems, speak out. We need to our patients, I think, need to learn how to be more confident to speak about their issues themselves.
Yes.
I
Yes.
saw a lot of challenges in that aspect, especially in Kenya. The other patient factor that I can think of course, is finances. That's just, yeah, and that's why we
Mm.
have to be in, like, how many patients do we know who would benefit from Ozempic? So many, so many. Anybody who has kidney disease and diabetes, anybody who is obese and has diabetes, anybody who, so many people have indications, but how many can
Yeah.
really afford? That's so the finances plays a big role. And then for some, it's also just their job. There are people who have type 1 diabetes who've told me, I don't want people to know. So I don't want to prescribe something that I have to inject myself like in front of everybody or whatnot. Like sometimes I have to kind of understand where the patient is coming from, what their preferences are, and then their
Uh,
mental health at that time. So there's many
mm.
things that go into it. But I think for me, I would say the thing that I use mostly in the diabetes space is just trying to make the patient understand that they are the ones in the driver's seat. It's not me. I'm just helping them. I'm like the Google Maps, helping
Mm-hmm.
direct, but they are
Yes.
the ones driving. They are the ones
Yes.
who have to take care of their body. It doesn't
Yes.
matter what their who is paying the bill or who is doing what or whatnot. As long as they are competent, they should have that confidence. Whether they
Mm.
are on injectable insulin, insulin pump, oral medication, lifestyle, it doesn't matter. They need to understand that the choice you have control over this. Don't leave that control to somebody else, as
Mm.
many do. And then now the healthcare system factors, which are so many. So many, we can't even get into them. But
I know.
that's how I look at those barriers and challenges.
Mm. Mm.
There's a lot that you can do with each of them. I think it's a whole CME for itself.
Yes.
But I think as
Yes.
healthcare providers, ours is to be cognizant, because sometimes we have a bias and we don't know we have a bias. Like, you might just see somebody who looks, then you're like, this one won't be able to afford that medicine. So you decide you're not going to
Yes.
tell them about it, because after all,
They
or
can't
if
afford
I start telling
it.
them about gym, how would they even do? You know, I will say, now
Yeah.
if I tell them exercise, this one doesn't. So let's not
Mm.
have that bias as healthcare providers, and let's be intuitive enough to kind of know the barriers our system has, and then the barriers that our patients have. And sometimes we help the system barriers. Like one of the things that I used to encourage my patients is get insurance, get NHIF. I left when it
Mhm.
was NHIF. I don't know what SHA did, because everybody likes SHA. SHA. All I know is that not everyone likes it, but empowering them to get insurance is very
Yeah.
important, and understanding that, especially in our setup, that that insurance is very important, because it can help you get screening, and if you get complications, it can help you deal with the complications, and you can get access to dialysis or access to a cardiac
Mm.
cath,
Mm.
just because
Mm.
of the insurance. So it's very important for us to be the patient advocate and kind of guide them in that scenario. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think in the light of ensuring that our patients and clients are able to afford the healthcare, this is
Mm.
where you mentioned when you are here about the NHIF, and if people can be able to enroll into SHA, but
Mm.
it also has to be a system that is working. And I
Yeah.
feel so, you know how private insurance can be a bit on the higher side when we are
Mm.
having people in Kenya who are actually living on day-to-day means. Like
Mm.
ile umepata leo ndio hiyo ndio anatumia hiyo siku na imeisha, tunaendea the next one imeisha, yeah. So we've gotten to the point where somebody asks you, like, you're teaching me how to save. What are you teaching me about? I don't even have a dollar or two to save, right? But if we have a system that is actually working, and which I think can work as long as you said, some things are just put into place, we would actually have a system that works. And most of us would actually end up being on that system. And this other
Yeah,
ones would be,
yeah, yeah. And you know, the thing about Kenya, to be honest, I still think Kenya has the most brilliant people I've ever met. And I'm in Canada. But I honestly think Kenyans are so innovative, so creative. Like NHIF was to go to the next level. There was expertise to take it to the next level. This whole things were just because people wanted cuts out of everything. But anyway, the system has to work for many things to happen. And the problem is that it creates a lot of frustration for healthcare providers. Personally, I won't lie. One of the reasons I left Kenya was I was so frustrated with the process. I was so frustrated. And you know, I had worked in public sector. I actually prefer working in a public health sector than private because I
yes,
feel more fulfilled. But it was so difficult because you're seeing this person who needs an echocardiogram and we'll never get it. They have mamas from here to
yes,
we'll never
yes,
get an echo.
yeah,
A
yeah,
person who needs dialysis, no access. A person who is on dialysis and then the catheter fell, but they only had cover for that one catheter. So now they don't have money for another catheter. So now I was like, what is this? It reached a point where I was like, you know what? I just can't deal with this. So for my own mental health, I had to step out.
yes,
I that
yeah,
was one of my like drivers out. And
mm,
so the system has to work better in order to retain healthcare providers who are truly passionate and ready to work and ready to help the people, you know. But we can't lose hope. I think there's still a chance. There's still hope that because we have all the people that it takes for the system to work. So it's a matter of us just taking that step forward and saying we're in it, we're in this, and things have to change. And I'm looking forward to that day when things will
yeah.
change. Yeah.
You know what? I would try to say, as long as we are also continuing to speak this voice of
Yes.
prevention,
Mm.
the more we are speaking about it, the more people are learning about it, the more people are questioning, the more people are saying no
Yeah.
to certain things. We
To
want
certain
things
things.
this way.
Hmm. Yeah.
People are like, so you're telling me to eat nutritious foods. Where am I meant to get those things? All you're saying is
Mm.
chemical, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, even though you live in an apartment, you can actually use your balcony as a source of
Yes, as
planting
a
stuff.
sort of, and the tire system. You know that tire thing. My mother
Yes,
had one where you put
yes.
water and then you put
Yes.
another smaller tire and you put nini nini.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
it's possible.
Yes.
You're right. It's
It's
very
very possible. It's just that sometimes we see as though, oh, I need money to go and buy CG what. Jana, I was seeing somebody who put, and I was like, I'm going to try this and see if it works. They took the onion, both the spring onions and the bulb onion.
mm.
So the spring onion, they cut the top part, so they remain with just the stem, and then they put it in water and they put it next to a window, so it starts sprouting and growing. So that is how they get their onions, and then the same to the bulb onion. Because I will try this one because I'm a trier of things just to see, So when we say sometimes we really also the fact that we've gotten to the point where we are saying we have to take things into our own hands as well,
Yeah.
because if the system is not working
Yes.
and seemingly maybe they make us the CS and the PS of health and then we'll make systems work.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. But if even though the systems are not working yet, we also have a role to play on how we are going about these things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.